Okay, so I know very little about you, and I do that on purpose to really like make this a fly on the wall conversation as if we were like literally just meeting. Um, so, which we basically are. So,
Yeah.
all I really know is you're married to Kara, live in Lexington, you're a composer as well. So, I especially want to dive into the composition component of this because I think I told you I've got a classical music background. Went to Kentucky, got a doctorate in percussion, which is why
Nice.
I ended up there. So, yeah, I'm curious. What is your background with music? How'd you get into it?
Well, it's in middle school, high school. I started playing. I played the drums first because it was the most fun, and kind of learned the piano a little bit after that. Learned the guitar. Kind of never played an instrument great, but knew how to play most
Uh,
instruments like roughly.
and where are you from?
So I'm from Louisville. So I grew up in Louisville and came here for college.
Okay,
Came to UK.
cool.
But I always just I wanted to make rap beats, to be quite honest. That was 100% the motivation to learn the software and put music together
Yeah.
for the first time.
And
And
what year
so
would this have been? Like whenever you started?
I graduated high school in 2006. So this would have been, right
Okay.
around 2000 probably is when I was in
So
like
you
middle
were born
school,
in
early
like
high school.
80.
88.
Were you born in like 80? Okay. I was born in
Yeah.
87. I was going to say I
Okay.
graduated in '05. So try to figure out the timeline. Cool.
Yeah.
And
So
I'm
I
sorry, we got a slight delay here, so I'm trying not to talk over you.
Oh, that's okay. And if I'm doing it to you, tell me to stop. I had to take one ear off because I can't hear myself, and I'm like, I hate that feeling.
Oh, yeah, it's weird.
Um,
Yeah.
but so yeah, I started doing. I learned Reason, which was kind of like an old school
Mhm.
MIDI controlled, like plug-in based
Yeah.
sequencer, and then I learned Logic after that, and started making rap beats and would give them to people at my school, and they're like, "Oh man, this sounds awesome. Sounds a little too much like a movie, too intense. Like just give us some space to rap." Basically, is what they were saying. Give us some air, and I was
So
just
when they
packing it.
say too intense, the orchestration of it, the instrumentation, like what was it?
Probably the orchestration.
Okay.
It's funny as a composer, you learn to kind of digest and interpret what people are saying, like what that actually means musically. Like there's all
Right.
epic. People say that epic, make it organic. Like you learn like what that means with how much reverb you're using, what instruments you're using, what the tempo is. And at the time, as a high schooler, I didn't know what it meant. But looking back, I was using strings, I was using large string sections as what's normally a synth based pad in a rap song. If I'm listening, I didn't
Yeah.
have access to any of that. And I liked the way strings sounded. I liked the whole orchestra. So it would be a really cool beat, but with orchestral music behind it. Um, and
Okay.
so it was
Who was
something
the
I just did for
inspiration
fun.
behind that, by the way? Like, where did you get that idea for strings and stuff in the background of hip
I
hop?
don't know. I mean, I was obsessed with Timberland. I still am Timberland at the time. Like
Okay.
he was like the guy. Like if you look at all of Jay Z and Aaliyah, all like the old school '90s. You know, so I loved his beat making. But I
Yeah.
don't know. I think I just enjoyed movies. I'm an emotional, sensitive person, so I like string. I like the way strings make me feel. I like the way that one note with one instrument can be played with all the different articulations on strings 12 different ways. Like a pizzicato, like pluck on a cello is playful, but then you strum it and it's a completely different sound. And then you slur it and it's a completely. So I liked all the different ways you could emote with the same instrument. And at the time I was using plugins. I
Yeah.
was using MIDI. I was playing everything on the keys. I wasn't actually using another person to help. So that came in later, learning how to like record musicians,
It
to
makes
which
me
I
kind of think of, sorry, real quick, I was going to say too, because of the nature of StreamYard that we're using right now, I don't know how familiar you are with this, but it's actually recording locally to your computer and then my computer. So
uh
if there's like breaking and like stuttering and that sort of thing in the feed, we won't see that.
okay, so it's got a
You and I will
good
see that,
recording.
but it's not going to be recorded that way. Yeah.
Okay,
So if
cool.
you see me stuttering or like something weird, like just pretend it's not
It's
happening.
like a
It'll
lag on
figure
the
itself out.
recording. Okay, cool.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, it's funny you say that because it made me think of Forgot About Dre
Hmm.
because the So
Yeah.
the synth strings that are going on there, there's sort of a, it's not really pizzicato strings,
Well,
but
those are like it's
is it
I
a
don't know what
banjo? What is that sound?
it. I think it's strings. I think
It's
it,
almost
but
like
what I
pizzicato.
so what I think happened with that. There's a guy named Scott Storch. He made like Fat
Mhm.
Joe and like all those that kind of like I
Okay.
don't know what section of like hip hop music that would be, East Coast, West Coast. I don't know, but he was like a real
Yeah,
big
I don't know.
He was a big sampler. So he would pretty much have all of these string recordings mapped to his keyboard. So he would be able to play things the way a piano would play it, but the sound would be of that of like a real recorded string. And so he
Which
actually
is how Seinfeld was recorded, right?
right, yeah.
That's not
So
actually a slap bass.
and
Yeah. Anyway.
that's a wild thing when you get into like playing with a MIDI controller to like actually recording things. Like I have a friend that worked at Remote Control, which is Hans Zimmer's studio, and the way that he
Yeah.
writes for big, huge, the way he can get this huge sound is you have to record the orchestra probably 40 or 50 times because there's no way that sound or all these different parts can be played by one orchestra at a time because there's only so many cellists, so many
Right.
violin players, and there's just too much going on in the recording. So it's because it was written in MIDI. And then when you try to transfer it over and record all those parts, an orchestra is like, okay, well, we're gonna have to play it once that way, and then we're gonna have to play over each other a different way to get all of those different
Which is
parts in.
wild, right? I mean, that's how vocal, like people don't know this, but generally, but I mean, that's how you get vocals in songs that you hear on the radio all the time and how
Oh
thick
yeah,
that
they're
orchestration
triple.
is
They're
because they're
one.
overdubbing themselves 100
Yeah,
times. Yeah.
and usually one's in your left ear a little bit. The other ones they're singing the same exact thing, trying to do it exactly
Yeah.
the same, but they're panning it left and right. And then they've got one in the middle, and it feels so much bigger than it. No voice on its own could
Right.
feel.
Well, making it thicker, like you said. And it's kind of interesting how so many different dynamics. I mean, it's really a business. As I understand it, it was almost more of a business decision on why Hans started doing some of the stuff that he's doing in sampling,
Yeah.
because it just gets so freaking expensive to hire session musicians to come in the studio. And when you're talking about overdubbing and playing an hour and a half soundtrack, how many takes you got to do? And that's just
Hmm.
one run through of one version of it. And like you
Yeah.
said, if you're doing a couple dozen versions or however thick that is, it's many, many days. That's a lot of time. It's a lot of time and
Yeah.
a half if you go over. It's just, it becomes super expensive. So,
And you
and
look at
correct me if I'm
deadlines
wrong, but
too.
as
If
I
you're on a
understand,
Go ahead. Sorry.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that. What did you say?
I was going to say you got to look at deadlines too. If you're on a television show or something, you might have to make an edit real quickly, and you can't do that on the fly with unions and players and studio time and engineers.
Yeah,
And so that was the business part of it. Usually, is that turnaround, the edit, the composer's the slave
yeah,
to the director. Like we're creative, right? But we are not just like out here trying to like show off. It's like the director's like, this is what it's going to be. Now that's where the
right.
communication is. So
Yeah.
I think that
Well,
was a big part of it.
and correct me if I'm wrong, but I mean, you were talking about Hans actually creating his own studio, sampling basically every technical thing that you could possibly do on every instrument at every dynamic level, because of course, like the energy
Mm,
behind some of the sounds changes depending on tessitura, all that kind of stuff. Um, and putting that in the box to basically play on the keyboard.
yeah,
Uh, as I understand, they even record just like maybe one take of the actual live orchestra, and then he'll just go back and layer it and do the rest of it just in the box, right? Is that true?
yeah,
Is that some of the
yeah. I mean, a
workflow as
lot
you
of
might
it
understand it?
is totally 100%. I mean, not every. I'm sure every score is different. Every cue and every score is different. But from my experience and then friends I know, you write it on MIDI first make to proof of concept. You record it real. You do whatever it needs, whether it's a lot of guys will put sub bass under very low, a
Hmm.
sub like a very low like sine wave bass under a bass or like a cello, and so you can't hear it, but
But you feel it,
but you can
whatever
feel
you
it.
get.
And so
Yeah,
it's like all this stuff that your ear is very easy to trick with stuff. So
Yeah,
yeah,
I
it's
love it. And
a
whenever
lot of
it's mixed
it's
well, it's wild how natural and organic it sounds. That's why I love
totally.
is it the Batman Begins soundtrack in particular. I marched drum corps for a couple seasons with Carolina Crown. I don't know if you
Oh,
follow
cool.
any of that kind of stuff, but
Uh-huh.
um, so are you familiar with what that is?
Yes, yes, but I'm
Okay,
not
yeah, yeah. So
very in
for
depth into
anybody,
it.
yeah, it's basically like professional drum corps, and the oldest people out there marching are like 22, and then you age out and can't do it anymore. So, but I was playing timpani, and
Nice. That's
that would
a
be one of the
cinematic.
things, like, right? I mean, people call it like the actual like conductor within the orchestra, but yeah, like usually the housing site would be an hour away from the performing site. So we'd have an hour in the bus to just sit there. And I just remember, like, it reminded me earlier because I'm in Wisconsin Dells, Wisconsin right now, and which is in the middle of nowhere outside northwest of Madison. We actually had a finals at Camp Randall Stadium in Madison one year, which was fun. But anyway, it just reminded me of those long bus rides to the stadium where I'd have the headphones on. It's back in the day when you still had CDs, and
Mhm.
listening to the Batman Begins soundtrack and just like that would be my hype music. I know people like everybody has their own kind of thing that gets them, in the zone, but yeah, that Hans Zimmer like super highly layered, organic, natural orchestra, like real people mixed with the digital together in such a nuanced way that you can't tell the difference. Like, is that a sound effect? Is that is that something that he's asking them? What what's it called? This is terrible. I can't remember. What's it called whenever you take your bow and you actually hit the wood on strings?
It's
Starts with
called
an S.
spiccato.
Spiccato.
Spiccato. Well, there's pizzicato, which is plucked. There's tremolo, which is
Yeah,
like real, and then
really fast. Yeah,
yeah, and then when you're slapping it, I think it's spiccato.
spiccato is when you like pull it up and let it drop. Right, basically.
Yeah, but they're usually like using their hand. The thing is with me is like
Oh,
I will write it, and
yeah.
I won't think about it. The first time I recorded with a real group of people was hilariously embarrassing because I had the notes down, I knew the notes were right, but there were just all these articulations, and so it's like they're doing what you're doing. Well, do you want me to play it this way or that way? And I'm like, I don't know, just make it sound like this. Like, do you hear the
Hmm.
recording? Do you hear the recording?
So did
Whatever
you?
that is.
So you
Like,
didn't notate the articulations?
no, like I am completely stupid when
Okay,
it comes to music. Like when it comes to like true sheet music and like, you know, it's not nerdy, but the nerdy side of that, I just don't get. Like I know what
okay,
will make you feel a certain way, and I know enough of how to put it together and enough how to
got it.
interpret what someone
So
wants and what a director wants. So it's like I needed to hire someone to help me. I said, "Hey, here's the MIDI recording. Here's what it sounds like in MIDI,
mhm,
and here's the way I did it. Here are the notes, and I know enough to know that these are the right notes. But will you please show me what articulations I need to put over the notes so that this
yeah,
person who is a machine, like they cannot play it unless it's exactly the way it's drawn. Like there's no like, hey, play these notes but play it differently than I wrote them. So
right. So have you
thankfully,
figured them out? Have you taken the time
yes,
to
yeah,
like?
yes. And
Okay,
what's cool
I
is
didn't know where you are in that journey. Okay.
I've found musicians that I know now personally that have worked on. I hired
Mm,
them for the Neat score. I hired them for some music bed stuff I did. Like I'm working with the same cellist all the time, and we're doing it.
got it.
I'm not working with large. Like I think outside of doing a large Hollywood thing, I don't think for what I'm writing, I'm ever going to record an entire orchestra. That'd be great. And I've worked with sections, but I can accomplish what I need to because it is a little bit more intimate as I've kind of refined my sound. A lot of my sound starts with atmosphere, and it's like I'm taking real recordings of something I did, at Colburn in LA 10 years ago. I'm taking but then I'm like stretching this thing out, and I'm creating like a organic, I don't know how to, like a pad for, you know, easy vernacular.
Yeah,
But then I'm putting with that smaller sections. And with for a smaller section and with a guy that I know or a girl that I work with all the time, I can get by for sure.
Yeah. So you went to Colburn?
I traveled to Coburn to record students. My
Okay.
first
I had
my
a friend
first
of mine that
score.
got a master's at Colburn. Now
Okay.
he got a DMA out at um, ASU, Arizona State, and then now he's actually in the Navy band,
All right. It's a
Navy
great
band
school.
in
I had a
Washington. Yeah,
wild,
yeah.
this might make the world smaller for you, but I don't know if you look on Music Bed at all, but you know Tony Anderson, really, really well known cinematic guy.
I
I'm
don't
friends
think
with
so.
him.
Yeah.
You need to look him up. He is a great composer,
Okay.
great guy. But I'm really good friends with him. We've collaborated on some films
Okay.
together and done some stuff. We're represented by Music Bed, like we're on the same label, kind of. So uh, his brother was a
Okay.
horn player out there, and his senior year, he wanted to go see his brother. I was working on a project, and we were friends. And I was like, "Hey, can I tag along and bring my mics and my computer and just see if
Yeah.
anything I'm working on we can have some people play, and they don't have the same
Oh, that's cool.
rules on how you have to pay them and all the stuff that so we went out there and
Yeah,
paid them per
right.
hour
And
and
they're eager to record because
right,
they need things for the CV. They want experience. They want to play. They want to feel needed. That's like the
yeah, and
biggest thing with students is they just want to
totally.
feel
And you tell
needed.
them like this is a commercial for Canon that I'm working on, like Canon
Yeah.
cameras, and they're like, okay,
They're
cool,
like,
like
hell yeah, sign me up.
they're
All
excited. Yeah, I send them the
right.
Vimeo link, and that's all they want, So
Yeah, that's funny. That's really cool. So what what's like your favorite thing to compose? I mean, I know that clients will like they have their things that they want. They want a certain vibe,
yeah.
instrumentation, orchestration, uh, methods of recording, whatever. But like, if you could actually just drive something 100% by yourself, what would that look like?
Hmm. I think you probably need to listen to the Neat score, the Neat soundtrack. So, like,
Okay.
what I'm kind of, since you don't know a lot about me and all that, like you were saying, I started as a composer, but I've never, like, I feel like there's composers over here that are very musical driven, totally creative people. And then there's the producer normally that's the business guy, either for the agency or for the film, who's like the, breakneck business dude, and I've never felt like either one of them 100%. Like I feel like
Mm.
I'm kind of this guy that's in the middle. Like I got a business degree from UK, never studied music. I just like it, and I went for it. While I was still in college, and got extremely lucky. And we can get into that too. I'm here out of sheer luck. But with this movie Neat, which is all about bourbon, that was kind of like my okay. I want to do this. Like I live in Kentucky. I know all of these film guys everywhere. I bring bourbon to film festivals. They wonder what it is. They ask me questions because I'm the Kentucky person. And I don't know. I don't know how to answer their
Yeah.
questions. I don't know what the difference between bourbon and whiskey is. I don't know. But I know I live 20 minutes away from everything. And so, as a joke, I
Yeah.
was like, yeah, we were at, I can't remember what film festival it was, but I gave the director something. I was like, yeah, the next movie will be about bourbon. He was like, dude, yeah, that'd be great. And then I came home. I was like, we need to do, I need to do that. And so, started becoming the producer, calling, finding interviews, raising money, getting the idea together to pitch back to the production company to say, hey, do you want to do this? Like, what will it cost to do this? Um, so to answer this is a very long-winded answer to your question, but uh, with Neat, I was allowed to, because yes, I hired a director, I produced it, wrote the copy, did all that stuff, but I didn't want to write the music for it because I was like, I'm too close to this. I am way too close to this. I'll
Mm.
hire someone else. And I was talked out of that very aggressively by everyone involved. And they're like, well, this was
Yeah.
your
This
baby,
is your
like you
baby.
need
You
to
should
do
do
it.
this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're going to look back and kick yourself for not doing it. Like there's something hidden in here.
Is Neat?
Actually,
Um, so I haven't seen Neat. Is there a fairly significant interview with Marion Eves in Neat?
oh yeah, she's one of our lead characters. We've probably got two or three
Okay,
lead
that's who I.
characters, and she would be one of the three.
Okay.
Um, so yeah,
I
she's
recorded
awesome.
a partial documentary with her like a month ago in our studio because Tim
She's great.
Jones, I'm sure you know Tim. Like
Yeah.
Tim is a friend of Rebecca Burnworth, It's actually her studio space that we do some production with. And so Tim needed a space that looked cool. It's very rustic. If you've been to the Stave in
Yeah.
Frankfurt, she's the owner of the Stave.
I
And so
I
it's
know
kind of
Rebecca,
that
dude.
sort of like
You are
that
like
vibe.
hanging out with
Yeah.
all my people. Rebecca, I know Rebecca really well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So
I didn't know that. Okay. Very cool. Okay.
another random connection, but
Yeah.
yeah,
So,
Marianne was. We met her. We interviewed her. I think probably her first week on the job, and she was just as amazing first week as she was. I mean, we took forever to finish this movie because the whole good, fast, and
yeah,
cheap thing. You can finish something good, fast, and
so
cheap,
true.
but you get to pick two. We did it good and we did it cheap.
Yeah.
And so it took a while, but we interviewed Marianne probably 7 or 8 times.
Okay.
But yeah, she's one. But yeah, neat was so
Yeah.
back to the music question. It was when I have when I'm emotionally invested into something enough to like really, really nitpick every tiny little thing, but then I have creative agency to not be told over and over and over again, like, okay, we're really going for this, we're really going for that. Um,
Hmm.
I like to create things. I mean, that's why I've gotten into real estate. I've gotten into other creative ventures just because I like to make things. And so with this score, with the neat score, there's, I felt like the cello is my favorite instrument. So to kind of answer your question there, I love recording the cello because
Okay.
it is so, it's just so cool. Like you don't have to put anything on it. You just compress the recording a little bit, and it's just so, I don't know, that dry wood. So when it came to bourbon, I'm like,
Yeah.
what's going to be the instrument that's going to like tell this story? And I'm like, it's going to be the cello, no reverb, no nothing, just dry cello. So how many ways can we get a cello to
That's
sound
cool.
if we're not going to put anything on it and make it very, because
Who
bourbon's an
was the
all natural
cellist that
product.
played?
His name's Chris Coleman. He composed for a little while, but he's just a,
I'm gonna
I don't
look him
even
up
know if he's
while
still
we
playing.
talk.
He's great, Chris
Where's he
Coleman.
from?
He's moved around. He's in Washington. He was in Washington when I hired him, but I've worked with him on quite a few things. Um, I think
Okay.
he might have some tracks on the music bed too. So we're all just one small. It's such a small little. We all just play on each other's stuff, and
I, that's one of those names where I was like, that sounds super familiar. I mean, they're two pretty common names, but Chris Coleman's also a pretty well known drummer. That's what I was thinking of.
okay, yeah. So
Okay.
he's great.
Yeah, I
So
don't
yeah,
think I
I
know
love
a
the
cellist by
cello,
that name.
and I
Anyway.
love kind of that creative control to kind of do wild stuff. Like we did a barrel pick
Yeah.
to help raise money for the film, kind of halfway in, and so I had the empty barrel. So I'm like putting mics inside the barrel. I'm like using that as all my percussion. I didn't want to use anything fake in it
Yeah.
because that's one of the rules of bourbon is it's got to be all no additives, no man-made flavors. It's just all as nature is, and so I wanted all the recordings to be as woody and real and scratchy as possible. So,
You know what's
uh,
so wild about that is like the people listening don't know that you went through that painstaking
right,
uh, task of having to sample every one of those sounds, and then you record it 1,000 times because you screwed something up,
right,
or the mic placement
right.
influenced something, or whatever. Like people don't know that any of that effort was actually in there, but somehow you can feel that effort in the actual end result of
Totally.
these films, which I think is actually just purely wild.
And I think that goes to any creative or even like business venture. Like if you're doing something not so people will notice you, but you really just want to make the best thing, who cares if they don't know what's in it? Like there are so many little Easter eggs and neat that like we put in there and I hope people get it, but if they don't, that's fine. Like the point is that we hopefully told the story in a way that would feel different, regardless of if they know how long that took. Like, yeah, I think that
Yeah. Well, you know
it's kind of
what's
like what you were saying, the MIDI
sorry
behind the
again.
real
We got this
recordings.
crazy
Oh,
little.
sorry.
Sorry, there's a wild delay. I'm sitting in the hotel. I would be out on the balcony where it looks much better, but it's thunderstorming here today.
That's okay.
So I'm in here and it's terrible reception and all this stuff. So thanks for bearing with us. But no, I was just going to say real quick the parallel between business ownership and operation. And that painstaking level of unknown effort going into composition is just wild because it's like, to your point, sitting there and scratching or flicking or hitting with a hand a barrel and recording that. Um, People could say like, well, why not just use a drum? It kind of just sounds like a drum with a
Hmm.
little extra reverb, but you've done a little more traditional route that would have been faster. To your point, you go through the effort to make it organic and make the whole story kind of fit much more together. And the same in business. It's like a lot of times you walk into a place and you're like, something about this place is just, there's a vibe in here. Like, I don't understand. Like, it's just a store. It's a common like retail place, but something about the branding, the experience walking in here feels perfect. Like
Hmm.
everything was, and you don't know that the business owner went through the painstaking operations and procedures to make certain things happen, but you feel the end result. And it's just wild how that is the exact same thing. The culmination of a ton of tiny little decisions,
Yeah. Well, do you
expertly
know
and
Rick Rubin?
purposely made.
Do you know
Yeah,
Rick Rubin or know of him?
yeah,
I
yeah,
love
yeah, yeah.
him. And in his new book, The Creative Pursuit or whatever it's called, he talks about that, like about how, he's been ripped off a lot, right? And artists, if you're ahead of your time and you basically are a tastemaker, you're going to create something ahead of its time. And then what will normally happen is you'll just get flooded with people that copy you because, oh, well, that's the
Mm,
sound. Like that gets me radio
yeah,
play or that gets me retweet treated. Like I'm just going to do what that is. And he has an amazing way of thinking about it. He's like, if you are creating to get to a certain place, then that's going to be your MO. All you can do is copy. But if you're creating for the sheer point of creating, whether or not anyone hears it ever, like I just have to do this. And I really don't care if one person hears it or 2 million people hear it. I don't care. Like those are the places that you're mentioning, the retail places or the music
yeah,
compositions or the films where you can feel it. It's like this was art and this was love. This had nothing to do with trying to, be
yeah,
something or get to a certain point because they're just being unique. So I that made me think of I just read that a couple days ago and
yeah. I mean,
so
isn't it wild? I mean, there's so many places where that kind of story or thing kind of shows itself. We're like, okay, perfect example. Literally just came off stage filming with Taylor Desson, who's here keynoting this event, and we're sitting here in the room just going over it yesterday, and he was like trying to write notes and like, should I go and put this bullet here and do this? And I was like, dude, you've been doing this for 12 years. You're the expert at this domain. You live and breathe this crap even when you're sleeping. If somebody shook you at 2 a.m. and they said, tell me
yeah.
about this, you'd be able to do it. So, like, you get in front of the crowd, of course, it's just going to sort of like come out of you. And that's what I was saying to him was like, take the bullet points in the PowerPoint and all that kind of garbage and leave it out because that's
Yeah.
you playing a part. That's you trying to follow a script. When if you just go organically and you create off the cuff, you take the information that you know super well and you just sort of create right there, which AKA is basically you just being you, right?
Hmm.
Um, Sort of what you were just talking about, not copying somebody, but you just going and doing the thing, whether somebody actually hears it or not, or understands it or not. The same thing here is like, don't go out there scripted and do X, Y, Z because the reason you got the keynote job is because you're you. And you're gonna that's antithetical to that if you're going up there and reading some
Right.
script. So just go
Well,
out there
it
and be
kind of
you. And of course he freaking killed it.
yeah,
So yeah.
good advice. Well, and it's like how I got into music in the first place. Like I was doing that in a way where I had folders of stuff that no one had ever
Mhm.
heard. I was is it that spot where it's like you've never really had a win yet, but you
Oh
really
yeah.
enjoy what you do? And so the way I got found or like my big break or whatever you want to call it was I just started giving music to people. Like
Mm.
I had enough friends that were filmmakers, ran nonprofits, doing, it was kind of like when story branding was getting real, like where a filmmaker could actually make a living with a corporate client. Like it was a very, key time in that. I just was giving music away, like sending links to the Dropbox folder, like, hey, you can
So
use
you
this.
had somebody that was making something for corporate or a documentary, and they were like, "Hey, I
Or I
need
don't
some
know what
music,"
you're
and you're
making
like,
this
"Whatever,
for.
here you go."
Yeah, I don't know what you're making this for, but here's my folder, and if anything fits for anything, you can use it royalty free. I'll put the release in there for you. Like, here it is.
Yeah, that's
And
cool.
so then my music started popping up places, and then I got a phone call one day from this guy who was in Pittsburgh, and he was like, "Hey, I put your one of your tracks in a trailer for a film I'm making. I'm not done yet. I'm done filming. I'm through principal photography. I'm getting ready to go into post. Are you cool if I'm trying to, it was like a teaser. Are you cool
Hmm.
with it?" And he just sent me a link to it, and I was like, "Yeah, that's great." And he goes, "I figured, but this is getting a little bit more to where I need you to sign this specific release." So I'm totally cool with it. And so then I forget about it, and then later he's like, "Hey, 6, 8 months later, hey, I actually put like 7 tracks, I can't remember, in the movie. Are you cool with that? Can I name you as one of the composers on the thing? Like, are you ASCAP or BMI? Like, let's keep track of like." And so I'm still not really knowing what this film's
Yeah,
about or anything. Cool, signed it, sent it back, and I'm still in school or just graduated school. Um, and then all of a sudden, the guy calls. He's like, "Hey, we got into Sundance. Do you want to come? You're listed as a composer." And so at this time, I had like a 4 month old baby. My first son was born, and so we took him to Sundance, and the thing just swept. It won grand jury prize. It won audience award. It won all this stuff. Got shortlisted. I mean, it was a huge deal. So all of a sudden now, I'm never really have been
yeah,
working as a composer, but my love and my music from a long time ago that just got put in this thing, like, I'm watching it
dude,
sitting
that's
in front.
badass.
It's like I'm sitting in like this crazy place with like all these like celebrities. I'm listening to my music and I'm like, I wrote that 4 years ago. I wrote that 2.5 years ago. Like, this is crazy. And I think that's why it worked, is because it's like I wrote it, and I at the time didn't care if anybody heard it. I was proud to do it. So
Yeah,
um,
that's wild.
so then from there it's like, well, this is what you do now. And so then the music bed called, and they're like, "Hey, we're looking to sign composers. We've been doing musicians."
Yeah.
And so got in there, and then I could start. Then now I could write music and pass it off to somebody and have a place to put it,
Hmm.
which led to bigger corporate clients. And so it's just, that's why I say I got lucky. And then through the music bed,
Yeah.
they put my music in a little short documentary called Body Team 12 that was nominated for an Oscar. Like, my music played on like the stage. Like, I got like the call sheet, played for 6 seconds in between the James Bond theme and the Pink Panther theme, was like my little 6 seconds of music. And it was a song I'd written a long time ago too, but it just kept popping up places because luck, and just, so that's why I say create just to create, not because the things I've tried real hard,
Yeah.
with the exception of Neat, because I'm very proud of that score. The things I've tried the hardest for, that were the most high profile, like a Mercedes Benz commercial, like, that's cool, but there wasn't like the heart in it. It was like, this is going to be cool.
Right.
Like, I'm going to get to put that logo on my website. Like, and so
Yeah.
it was a different piece of music. It wasn't as inspired, is all I'm saying. So,
Yeah.
um,
No, that totally makes sense. Um, I want to go back real quick to something that you said. You were talking about Pittsburgh. Like, so do you have a connection to Pittsburgh other than this composer?
No, this was random. It
Okay.
was a production house called Animal, and they were the ones that had, before they got into the documentary space through this one film, Blood Brother.
Hmm.
Um, they were doing all of like the animal moving, like for commercials. Like, if you're the mouth, like the Yo quiero Taco Bell, or like if an animal talked on TV or in a movie, like they could get the mouth to move, and so I
Oh,
think
that's
that's
cool.
where that name came from. So, but then through them, I
Okay.
met other Pittsburgh-based production people through that relationship, being in
Hmm.
Pittsburgh a little bit for the movie, and then that's actually the good friends that I hired for Neat to be my DP and stuff for Neat, was another company in Pittsburgh. So it was through that relationship that I met all these people, but I did not have a connection.
Yeah. The only reason I ask, I have most of my family actually lives in Pittsburgh or surrounding areas like West Mifflin, McKeesport, those kind of things,
Okay.
Cannonsburg. So I spent a sizable amount of my childhood in that city, and I freaking love it. It's
Yeah,
great.
I didn't have a very, in my mind before being there, I didn't think I would like it. I kind of had a kind of
The city?
stereotypical made up, version of what I thought it would be in my head. And then I was there and it's
What
like,
did
this
you
is
think it
cool.
was?
I don't know. I think I put it in the same camp as like a Detroit, like a steel factory, just kind of like an old, like as far as the
Well, that's
downtown,
probably what it would have looked like in the 70s and 80s before
right,
steel
more of like
left.
a
Yeah.
rough, like industrial downtown, not so much like a vibrant artistic downtown. That was the biggest.
Oh, yeah.
Um,
Well, I think it's wild. Like, so my dad worked in steel mills there for about 25 years. Then got laid off whenever they shut down, of course. And then that's how I ended up in. I grew up in, was born in South Carolina. He went down there to work for an
okay.
uncle. Anyway, so, but I just hear the stories from my parents and grandparents about like it'd be, mid 80s or whatever it was, and they're about 10 miles away from the actual steel mills, and they're out there at 9 a.m. sweeping the porch to get all the soot off, and they're out there at 10 a.m. to sweep all the soot off. And I'm like, when you're talking about like being dirty and filthy, and the EPA's not really doing anything, there's no like, they're not giving a crap about the environment. It's like, that's what I picture is what you pictured apparently.
Right.
But it is crazy to think the Benedum Center's there, Heinz Hall, of course, Pittsburgh
Mhm.
Symphony, and all sorts of other things. I mean, I think Schindler's List was actually recorded on that stage with
Oh
Itzhak
wow,
Perlman with the Pittsburgh Symphony.
I didn't know that.
Um, yeah, I'm pretty sure. Um, yeah, it's crazy the amount of talent that has come out of that city in everything. I mean, Andy Warhol,
Hmm.
just creative individuals. Pretty, and they
That was
say
the only
that
one I
that's
knew.
like Andy Warhol. And
Yeah, that's the
yeah,
only
that's
like
funny.
artist I knew.
Yeah, they're. Oh man, I'm putting myself on the spot because and now I can't. Of course, I can't remember anything when I need to. But yeah, um, man, we have a lot of connections. It seems like between the music, Lexington, Pittsburgh, all the
Yeah,
whatever. So that's pretty cool. I want to continue this conversation sometime. I think that would be a lot of fun
yeah. When you
to
get in
just
town,
kind of uncovering stuff. Yeah, I mean, I'll be back on Thursday, and then I don't think I travel anymore for a while.
sure.
Um, but yeah, so what is like the the project that you're most proud of to this point in your career, that you're happiest, and just
Yeah,
whether or not it's Sundance worthy or something, but like
yeah.
something that you've felt super successful with.
I would say neat because that was an idea that I had it as the seed of an idea. Um, Obviously had a great team to help me. I didn't do it all by any means, but the original idea, the original just pitching to people that would slam the door in your face for, calling distilleries. No, we're not going to shut down. No, who are you?
Yeah,
Click. Um, Taking it from there to actually finding the characters, finding the story, getting to know some amazing people. One of our main character was a third generation tour guide, like that no
mm,
one really was
cool.
talking about, and we got to know him, put him in the film, shared his story. He got inducted to the Bourbon Hall of Fame. I got to induct him. Got to go to Louisville and like
Wow.
be his do his induction speech. So, from a relational standpoint, like really fun. The group of people we made the movie with, greatest group of people ever. But I got to learn like, okay, from the beginning to the end, from how do you raise the money, how do you set the goal, okay, how do you sell to a distributor, how do you get it on. We signed with the Orchard, which was our goal. Like they were like Sony Pictures, like indie branch, like very, very picky. And we got signed by them, got it on airplanes, got an exclusive license to Hulu. Like it's and
Yeah.
like I read the book Perennial Seller by Ryan Holiday 100 times probably when we were
Mm,
making the movie, because I wanted bourbon's history is very back and forth. Oh, we love it. Oh, we hate it. Oh, and so I wanted to make it something that, we're still getting calls about it, still getting people interested in wanting to screen at places, and we released it like 6 years ago or 5 years ago.
Yeah.
So that's kind of that's what I feel the most proud of is I told this story the way I wanted to tell this story. Not from, oh, how popular is it? How expensive are the bottles? What celebrities are drinking it? None of this like flashy stuff. It was just like, what is
Right. The
this? And like,
superficial
what?
side. Yeah.
Yeah. And this was like the love letter basically to Kentucky. This was a character study on like the culture and the people of Kentucky pretty much. So I'm very proud of that. I'm proud of the score. I'm proud of where it went. And I'm proud that people
Yeah.
still want to watch it. So
Well, man, that's badass. Congrats on all of that. Because, like I said, I didn't know your journey from, being coming not from a music school, and then to be at Sundance and on the Oscar stage and to be heard on airplanes and screens around the world.
yeah,
It's wild what you can do. I mean, I think that's what we're seeing right now is that challenge to college or the institution. Like
right.
if you care enough, if you have enough passion, you'll figure out what you got to do.
Yeah,
Like you said, you didn't even know articulations and how to write that stuff down for a human being, and
right.
here you are. So, what's your take on that? I mean, like I would imagine you have a pretty skewed take because
Yeah.
you lived it, but as somebody that came from the academic side, I would imagine all the people that I know in academia or from the orchestral world would be like, I can't believe somebody like that would be able to get that kind of
Right.
success and nobody hears my music. It's like
Yeah.
there's this entitlement, I feel like, where people go through and they get degrees and they're like, well, I'm entitled to be there. And well, this AJ dude had nothing to do with school. Like, he doesn't even know he doesn't know what slurs are. Like,
Yeah.
who cares? Right.
Right. And I think that from a
And I hope you
school.
hear this as me not
Oh,
knocking
totally.
you or where you're
No,
coming from.
I I
Okay.
am
I hope you don't hear that
100%
way.
like I am 100% thankful. Imposter syndrome is real. Like it just I 100% hear what you're saying, and I think I would probably argue that I don't understand why it happened to me, but I'm trying to like dissect maybe what I want to take away from that is I
Mm.
need people that know all that stuff, right? So it's not like I'm doing everything all by myself. I'm not this one man show. Like I think I just have a unique vision and a unique way to communicate and a unique way to start to like, get the kindling going with something. And then
Yeah.
I hopefully, and I hopefully am becoming a more humble, um, version of myself every day when I realize I don't know this stuff. And I think when you start out when when I got to be the first film festival I ever had a film in was Sundance. The
Hmm.
second one was like I think it was in
It's
Pittsburgh
all
somewhere. I can't
downhill from there. I mean,
exactly. No, I mean people were writing article like I was on podcasts like crazy and articles like about like what to do after what to do when like you hit the top of the thing at age 25 like
yeah.
and so like I was constantly I wasn't like the poster child by any means for it but like that's what they wanted to talk about was like where are you going from here and I'm like I don't know like I really don't but this was never the goal for me either like
Right.
the goal to me was to
Well, considering you wrote the damn music 2 years prior to it
right
even getting used,
so
which
it's like I
is
think
that's
for
crazy.
schooling and
Yeah.
stuff if you want to do music if you want to be a composer goodness learn the things I didn't learn like it's gonna be so helpful. But I do think I have a unique way to go find my own project, make my own project, and hire myself, and then bring in all these people because of where I've ended up. And so I think from where
Right.
I am now, I'm thankful I didn't get pigeonholed into and I think this is true of any industry really. Like you get a certain certificate and a degree and it's like well it's because there's a railroad track from here to there and that's what success is here and so you're really pigeonholing yourself into what's possible and what I did maybe a little bit on purpose but a lot of it on accident was say I don't know where I fit I don't know if I'm the composer. Really, I
Hmm.
wasn't. It's not what I was studying, and I don't know if I'm a business person. Like, I'd rather not make some money and have a good relationship. Like, you know what I'm saying? So it's like,
Yeah,
where's my
but you know what?
middle? And
That that's why I think that you've had this success that you've had with what feels like minimal skills coming into it, or fewer skills than more traditionally trained people, because it's sort of a spectrum, I guess. It's like I've met more people that come from an institutional academic whatever background where that entitlement exists, and because of entitlement, there's a lack of drive and conviction and passion for what they're doing. It's just like you said, it's sort of a prescribed situation. It's like you come
Mhm.
in on day one, there's a curriculum that you're supposed to learn with a professor in a certain room with others, and music that's selected for you to rehearse together at a set performance time. And like literally everything is a checkbox. Okay, did you do all these things? Okay, well, then I guess you graduate, which is great in one sense because it's a cheat code for skills.
Mhm.
You've outsourced the thinking and all of that stuff to somebody else. You just walk in the room and you do what they say. Hopefully, you've learned some things during your time. You graduate. But the thing that you had that I think so many of the people that I went to school with lack is the determination to figure it out and the humility
Yeah.
to know I don't know how to do this. I'm going to figure that out. And it doesn't matter if you went to Yale as a master's student or if you go to Juilliard or you go to Colburn. It doesn't matter because if you don't know the business, if you're a jerk, if you don't have the drive, things don't just fall in your lap. You have to actually go make your own opportunities.
Right.
And obviously,
Well,
that's what you've done.
and kind of like what you were saying earlier about like you don't see the work, but you can hear the difference, kind of thing. I I feel like I've gotten those looks before when I'm recording with like a really good violin player, and I'm asking them to play something again, play it again, play over yourself, do, and I don't know what I'm at. This is not stuff they've ever been asked to do, and I think the side eye that I get during those moments. I grew up with rap, and I was
Like
a
what? What's an example?
well,
And I
like
do have to hop off in a minute.
oh,
I'm
you're
really
good.
sorry because I love this
So
conversation and I could go for hours.
it's more of like they want to play it from the beginning to the end. They want to perform, right? They want to play. If it's a
Mm.
3 minute track, they want to play for the whole 3 minutes. And I'm like, no, 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 no. We're going to go for these 30, these 16 bars,
We're
and
doing phrases, right? Yeah.
you're gonna play through it, and I'm gonna stop it. And then you're gonna play with yourself. Okay, now harmonize with yourself. Now, okay, now try this. Okay, now just play this ostinato over and over and over again the whole time with yourself. And they're like, what? And but then I let them listen to it, and I remember I won't by name say, but I remember just being like, what are you, kind of getting a little bit of attitude, like, no. And then I sent it along, and she wrote
Mhm.
back, I don't know how you did that, but that's beautiful. I did not hear any of that happening together. And I think I was a DJ in college when I first got married. I love
Okay.
sampling, hip hop. So I'm very much like, okay, how do I mix these things? How can I
Yeah.
how can I take this little 2 second phrase, loop it, take this 4 second phrase, put it over top, and then have one thing over that blends it. So I think that's a good example of like it's going to sound different. So my music, it might not be technical, it might be wrong, it might be absurd and obscene to some people, but I think that's what gave me a unique voice is doing orchestral music
I love
like that.
wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think with art and
Wrong.
music, it's like I don't care
Yeah.
if I'm wrong. I would rather be wrong because I'm going to
Dude,
sound
music
different.
is sound. Like, how in the world
Yeah.
do you do sound wrong? Like, you can't do sound wrong. Like, what are
And
we talking
Social
about here?
Network
You know,
won the
we've invented,
Grammy or
we've been, yeah.
Social Network won the Oscar for best orchestral score or best movie score the year I was kind of coming up. So that helped me out a lot because I could point to that and be like, see, that was just sounds.
Yeah.
That was Trent Reznor just like going
Right?
crazy with a reverb and he won. So there's something to this. Like,
Yeah.
so
It, yeah. Well, I really appreciate your time. Like I said, I would love to keep going. I absolutely am 30 seconds late for a client meeting that I have to do. These on the
yeah.
road kind of things are really tough, but I'm trying to get it all in because I want to respect your time and not have to reschedule and all that kind of stuff. So I appreciate your time doing this. I appreciate you being flexible. We were supposed to be in studio. We changed to do this last second. I know this is not an ideal look for me. I would love to be in person. So maybe if you're down with doing maybe a follow up where we can go a
Yeah,
little bit more in
I'm
depth.
totally do. I work
think that would be a
downtown.
lot of fun.
I'm got a pretty good schedule for that kind of stuff. So just hit me up.
Cool. Hey, thanks so much for listening to the Lexington Business Show. Go right now, rate and review the podcast. It's how we grow and thrive and how we get more listeners and get to do a lot more cool stuff here on the show. Thank you.